Marketplace with Charles on an 11-day tour of the Holy Land. Take the route Israel traveled to the Promised Land, cross over the Red Sea, and float on the Dead Seas, the lowest point on earth with amazing healing properties. Experience the vibe of Jericho and cruise on the Sea of Galilee to Capernaum, the hometown of Jesus. Visit the pools of Bethesda, Nazareth, Bethlehem, and many more. Walk where Jesus walked and see the Bible come alive. If beautiful memories and an enriched spirit is what you are looking for, then join us in taking Jesus to the marketplace. For more information, call us on +27 72 123 0078 or email israel@artofskincare.co.za.
Welcome to Marketplace with Charles, where dreams are turned into reality. Marketplace is brought to you by Art of Skincare, the company that brings out the beauty in you, as well as Gubisa Lodge from deep in the heart of Mabalingwe Nature Reserve. I am Ketiwe Pagati. On Marketplace, we empower as well as equip you with tools needed for you to achieve your entrepreneurial dreams. Each week, we bring you insights from experts in different fields of business, be it men or women of faith. In today's program, we meet a dynamic woman. She is a publisher, an author, and an advocate for transformation. She also speaks and facilitates discussions on social as well as spiritual matters. Where there is imperfection, there will always be a call for change. God has always had the voices of prophets calling for man's ways to change and embrace goodness, love, and acceptance of one another. Whether it be across racial, gender, political, or economic lines, injustice will always prevail until challenged. My guest today will talk about how society can embrace God's royal law of loving one another. Welcome with me, Miss Nobuntu Webster, to your home or hotel room or wherever you are joining us from today. Nobuntu, hello and welcome to Marketplace with Charles.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited about the conversation I believe we're going to have.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here. So the first thing I want to know from you, before we even get into the book, which is what I'm very excited about, but this is not about me. For the viewers at home, who are you and just a brief background about what you do?
Sure. So who am I? I am a daughter of God. I'll start there. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and I'm in the marketplace as a publisher and as a producer, running a company which I co-own called Avad Media. I'm a storyteller through and through. So everything that I do is through story, and everything I do is around story. I speak of social injustice through story. I speak of the word through story. Everything that we create in our media business actually works through story.
Through story. So now I've actually observed evidence of what you're stating now in all your speaking engagements as well as your book. You are not scared to touch all subjects, all spheres of life, but it seems like there's one underlying thread through it all is transformation. So why is transformation for you so important across all spheres of life?
So I grew up living between two worlds. I grew up in a township in Durban called Inanda. And I went to school in a private school. And this would have been from the 80s, right? So I would have been in preschool around 1986. I was in grade 1, 1989. And I went to a private school in the high-end suburb of Musgrave in Durban. Would go back home to the township of Inanda. So I grew up knowing what injustice was. I grew up having experienced it firsthand. You know, I grew up seeing it as a kid every single day. You didn't have to tell me about it. You didn't have to teach me about it. I knew what injustice was because I lived it and saw it every day, right? And being a Christian, being raised in a Christian home, and as I got older, getting to know more about who God is and what God is about, God is a God of justice. And when you look especially at the life of Jesus, Jesus was for everybody. And this is why the Bible then says there is no longer Gentile nor Jew. There's no longer slave nor master, male or female. And it is because at the core of the gospel and at the core of the life of Jesus is justice. So I lived it, and then I came to know that so much of what God is about is justice.
You wrote a whole book, because clearly you have so much to say. Named it The Fire in My Bones. What was the inspiration behind that book? Why did the message have to come out?
So I have always questioned the status quo. One of the things my parents will tell you about me is that I was the child who always questioned how life was, how life worked. I was the child who always questioned why things are the way they are. So one of the things I questioned, because I grew up in a Christian home and I grew up in church all the time, one of the things I questioned was religion. I questioned why we did things the way we did them. I questioned whether we're supposed to do those things. I questioned, okay, so we're at church now, doing this, dressed in this way. Why do I have to get dressed up to go to church? What is that about? Why does my father have to wear suits? Why can he not preach or stand on a podium? Why are women not preaching when we go to church on a Sunday, yet more than half of the denomination is women? So I questioned a lot of things. I would even question stuff like communion. I would question, okay, so when I read in the Bible, they weren't going up to an altar and taking a shot of juice and a cracker. Is that what Jesus meant when he said, do this in remembrance of me? And I remember being a teenager who figured actually what he meant was every time you sit down and have a meal with each other, do it in remembrance of me. And that way, actually, you'll live the way Jesus lived. We're talking now about justice. We're talking about transformation. That way, you'll be transformed to be like Jesus because you talk about him all the time. You reflect on his life all the time, not just on Sunday.
Now you're disturbing many people watching. You're disturbing many people watching because we wait for that one Sunday in a month where we go up front to have that shot of juice, to have that cracker. Yeah, I took your words. And that cracker, and remember Christ. Now you're telling me that your understanding of that scripture is every time we sit down for a meal. So help me now change my waiting for that day on Sunday so that I adopt this lifestyle. What are you going to say to me? Because you just shocked my system.
I'm going to say burn religion, right? So I'm going to say the stuff that you've been doing as rules, as protocol, go back to the source of that because they're not necessarily wrong. They are just not being implemented or not manifesting in the daily life of you as a believer, in your own daily life. So go back to the source. That's what I'm going to say. And actually, I'm going to say, don't necessarily do things the way I'm saying. I'm going to say, go back to your source and ask God, what did you mean when you said this? When you inspired Paul to write this, what did you mean? What did this actually mean? And you'll find, even for yourself, how actually the word should be applying to your daily life and not waiting for a Sunday and actually not waiting for a preacher to tell you.
Yeah, no, I hope that hits hard but gentle at the same time.
Yeah, hard but gentle, lovingly.
Lovingly. So there's many instances where within the church, and when I say the church, I mean the full body of Christ, not just your denomination or mine, where inequality as well as lack of unity is still very much apparent, right? Your church does it that way. Our church there does it that way. Our church is for this type of people. These are our practices. We only question up to so far. We don't question at the Nobuntu level. So what do you have to say about the lack of unity within the church, and should it continue?
In my book, it's the first thing I talk about, in the first chapter. And I reflect on being a child or being a teenager who was from a certain church and somehow had come to believe that my church was better. Had somehow come to believe that the true salvation can only be found in my church and in the way we do things. And only to find that my counterpart or my friend and peer felt the same about her church, which I looked down on and felt, oh, those people, they don't really know God. They just know, rules and regulations. And only to find that she felt like, we're the ones who know God because we keep to the rules and regulations, So I reflect on that in the book, and I reflect on it because I believe that denominationalism and actually even the church institution as an institution was not necessarily something that God intended for us. God intended for us to be believers in the God of the Bible. With the coming of Jesus, Jesus asks us to follow him. He says, follow me. And to follow him is to live life the way he lived. He lived a life of sacrifice. He lived a life of transformation, changing every space he came into, changing lives, changing societies, changing how people did things. So for me, when we start to make it about how my church does things and my church being better, we lose what it is to actually be followers of Christ and believers of the God of the Bible. And so we lose what it is to bring God's kingdom to the earth. Because that's what we're supposed to do together. Together, we are supposed to bring God's kingdom to the earth. And so we are supposed to go into our own spaces of influence and bring God's kingdom to the world. Go into the marketplace and bring God's kingdom to the world. We're supposed to be here to be filled up and to find our identity in Christ and to live it out.
All your answers are like a challenge. Well, at least to me, I don't know about the views. Like, are you listening? Are you hearing this?
They're a challenge to me too, every day.
That means you're living in your truth. You're not out there acting as if you've got this. You know, you stand for this, you're in pursuit of it. This book is evidence of a lot of things you're in pursuit. There's a chapter here called God and an African Girl. You could have just said God and a girl. You could have. There's a reason why you said God and an African girl. You could have said me growing up with God. So why was it so important for you to position that chapter that way and tell that story?
It was important because many of us have come to question whether God is for us as Africans. It was important because I was raised with a very Eurocentric picture of God. It was important because I was raised with pictures of a white Jesus with blue eyes and brown blondish hair. And so in my own journey of going back to who God is, I had to find my story as an African and as a woman in the story of the Bible. And that's why it was important. And it was actually embarrassing for me discovering all the things I discovered about God and an African, because they've always been there. These things are right under our noses. The mention of Cush in the Bible, so many times, which is Africa, the land below Egypt. The mention of Egypt in Africa, the fact that Jesus lived in Egypt for some part of his childhood, all of that, the eunuch, the Ethiopian eunuch that Philip comes across, those things have always been in the Bible, and they've always validated our story with God. But it was something that I didn't grow up knowing. And that was not always in my face. So it was important for me to title the chapter in that way and to have a whole chapter dedicated to the journey of finding myself as an African in the Bible. And what I can say is that it's all there.
Just not taught it that way. So you mentioned earlier that our role, instead of just fellowship, is to follow Christ with the aim of bringing his kingdom to earth. Right? So we can't say that we have fully done that or we're not there. But what I want to know about that is, as Christians, what role do you think we are playing in the world? As a matter of fact, what are we really playing in the world? Is it negative? Is it positive? What are we doing?
I really hate answering this question.
Good luck.
Because unfortunately, there are negative implications of Christianity, or maybe let me say of modern Christianity. You know, it's terrible to have to admit that apartheid in South Africa was actually preluded by the separation of the church into black churches and white churches. The apartheid government learned from the church that it's possible to separate the country according to race. The apartheid government learned from the church. So, unfortunately, you know, there is some influence that we have which is negative as the church. The most divided time or day in the country is on a Sunday, when everyone goes off to their white church or to their black church.
Did you come here to preach?
Nowadays, corporate businesses are generally not like that, but church is like that. Monday to Friday, you'll probably go to work, and most likely you'll be in a diverse environment racially. But you'll go to church and you'll be in an environment where you're either only with majority black people or only with majority white people or Indian people or colored people, whatever it is. So I believe that that's one of the major negative impacts or influences we've had on society. And that is not a result of who God is or what God has said. It's a result of the distortion or the use of the gospel to divide. So there is so much, everything that we have done that is negative is not of God. We lack love. We lack love. We've judged more than we've loved. We have been quiet in the face of injustices so many times and not shown up in love or with the voice of justice. But we have a chance and the opportunity to start to live that out. I think that the positive aspect of what the church or Christianity has done, especially in my country, is being a voice of morality. Okay. So we've been the voice of morality. We've been the place where people are taught or molded into moral beings, into virtuous beings, into virtuous living. And I think we've done that well. But there's more to it. There's more that we still need to do. And there's more that we still need to recapture of who God is.
In 2020, how should we, the church, be influencing the world?
We should be influencing the world by being what Jesus was. Okay. We need to go back and look at the life of Jesus. And substantially, his life was about love. Jesus speaks up for a woman who's about to be stoned because of a sin that she's committed. That is grace and that is love, but that is also courage and justice. We need to be truth and love. So where we speak truth, there needs to be love. We can't have the one without the other. What we need to be, if we are to follow who Jesus is we need to be love, but we also need to be truth. We need to speak the truth. We need to not be ashamed of the truth of God, even when it's hard and a bitter pill to follow, but it needs to be done with love. And we need to be justice and mercy. Yes, we need to speak of God's justice, but we also need to speak of God's mercy. And we need to have mercy, but there's no point in having the mercy if the justice isn't there. So we can give food to the poor all we want, but if we're not creating an environment for the poor to see justice and to start to be able to stand on their own and recover what they've lost in a life of poverty, then it's meaningless as well. So I'd say it's love and truth and justice and mercy.
So in your understanding, love, truth, justice, and mercy, what do those mean?
They mean balance.
Okay.
They mean balance, and for me, they mean kingdom. Because often you have one without the other. They mean living the life of Christ, actually, because he was love and truth. He was justice and mercy. He showed mercy to people who were repentant. But at the same time, he is just. And he will speak and live justly among those people.
So what role do you think is the female's place in the church at this stage?
The female's place in the church, first of all, is the same as what the male's place has been all along. I'm firstly going to say that. Okay. We need to step into the responsibility and calling that we've had all along, but that we've been tied down and tied up from being and from doing. So all along, that has been the call in our life, to speak up, to speak the mind of God, to speak the heart of God, to live out the gospel. But so much we've been tied and limited to only doing it amongst ourselves, right? And not in the world out there, and not in the church by empowering others, including men, to be able to stand up and speak God's heart. So I would say that's the first thing. The role of the woman is to take on the calling and the mantle on their lives, just as men have all along, to lead. And the second, I would say, is to understand that we are particularly for this time because there is certain anointing and certain gifting that is unique to women. And that this is a time that needs it. And one of those things is courage, that is different from that which is in men.
Yes.
And that is because women have to fight just to survive, let alone to thrive. The world is not for women. Society is not for women. So women have a courage. A woman who's raising 3 children alone, and there's so much of that. It takes courage to go out into the world every single day and do that. For a woman to become anything, she has to jump over so many more hoops than a man does. And so just by virtue of being born a woman in this world today, you have courage. If you make it from day to day and are able to survive and live from day to day, it is because you have courage and you're a warrior. So I think that the second role of women in this day is to use that courage for God's kingdom and to use that courage for the fulfillment of God's purposes for this time.
And on that note, this woman is going to have the courage to take us onto a break. Viewers at home, don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back with my guest, Nobuntu, after this break.
Join Marketplace with Charles on an 11-day tour of the Holy Land. Take the route Israel traveled to the Promised Land. Cross over the Red Sea and float on the Dead Seas, the lowest point on earth with amazing healing properties. Experience the vibe of Jericho and cruise on the Sea of Galilee to Capernaum, the hometown of Jesus. Visit the pools of Bethesda, Nazareth, Bethlehem, and many more. Walk where Jesus walked and see the Bible come alive. If beautiful memories and an enriched spirit is what you are looking for, then join us in taking Jesus to the marketplace. For more information, call us on +27 72 123 0078 or email israel@artofskincare.co.za.
A pleasure to welcome all you back to the Marketplace with Charles. That's Ketiwe for today, and my guest Nobuntu Webster is still here with us. Nobuntu, The Fire in My Bones is not the only book you have. You also have another book with a fun but daring title, Perfect Mess, Perfect Grace. Do tell us a little bit about that.
So that was my first book, my first literary baby. Mm-hmm. So I have such a soft spot for it. The book is a Christian fiction book, and it is about the life of a young woman named Zanoduma Mkize, who is in first year university and is finding herself, really. There's a lot of what she thought was a perfect life, having grown up in a Christian home and what looks like a perfect family, which starts to crumble all around her. And some truths that she comes to know of will change her perception of what she thought was a perfect life. And so she then goes on a journey of looking for perfection, not in her own life or in her own power or in her own strength or in her identity of home, but finding it in God.
I actually want to read this book by listening to you. I want to hear the whole book.
I'm glad.
Yeah. But unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. But before we go, just let our viewers know where they can get a hold of copies of your book or where they can reach you.
So my book is available at all leading bookstores in South Africa, Exclusive Books, Bargain Books, CNA, Take a Lot. And you can find more information also about my book on my website, nobuntuwebster.com. You can order it directly from there. And you can see other work that I'm doing on the site as well.
Nobuntu, it's been a total pleasure. Thank you again for gracing our studio.
Thank you so much for having me. I had an awesome time.
Well then, there you have it. That was my guest, Miss Nobuntu Webster. Let us, you and I, meet again, same time, same place for yet another power-packed episode. Don't forget to check out the repeat every Wednesday morning at 1 a.m. on this very channel. And to catch repeats at your own time, of course, it's not a problem. Just subscribe to the Marketplace YouTube channel, which is called Charles Ngobeni. I assure you, that's a decision you will not regret. Thank you for watching Marketplace with Charles, brought to you by Art of Skincare. And do remember to get in touch with us. Our website is charlesngobeni.com. You may also want to follow us on social media. That is Charles Ngobeni everywhere. Don't forget the _ on Instagram. And to get a hold of myself, Ketiwe, that is my Keti Speaks Live on Facebook. Until next time, it's goodbye and God bless.
Join Marketplace with Charles on an 11-day tour of the Holy Land. Take the route Israel traveled to the Promised Land. Cross over the Red Sea and float on the Dead Seas, the lowest point on earth with amazing healing properties. Experience the vibe of Jericho and cruise on the Sea of Galilee to Capernaum, the hometown of Jesus. Visit the pools of Bethesda, Nazareth, Bethlehem, and many more. Walk where Jesus walked and see the Bible come alive. If beautiful memories and an enriched spirit is what you are looking for, then join us in taking Jesus to the marketplace. For more information, call us on +27 72 123 0078 or email israel@artofskincare.co.za.
This is Dr. Abraham S. Raj extending an invitation from our free Bible school, KBSM, and I want to encourage you to come and train, equip, activate, and be released into the ministry. We take you all the way from believer to leadership level to ministry level. Do you believe you have a calling? Then we have the answer to usher you into your destiny. Remember, our material and our broadcasts are available all over the world. We are fully correspondent and have several international students. So why waste any further time? Contact us today as we train you into that next level of your ministry. Remember, we are free. Bless you. See you at one of our campuses.